out of here. Morning, Trainiacs. We're back from Challenge Roth 2019. Let's unpack. We're gonna dive into the race. It was good! All right, Trainiacs. Challenge Roth 2019 done and dusted. It went well. We got a lot of things to talk about. Lots of lessons, lots of good stuff. We are Iron Men and women. Well, technically, we are iron distance men and women. Trainiacs. Nice. So as I sit in front of the Shikon bag, which I love, by the way, let's start off by talking about the travel. Historically, I had always wanted to get to a race one day for every hour of time difference, especially when I'm going east, because you lose time. So in South Africa last year, I flew 8 days ahead of the race so that by the time the race came around, my body was fully adjusted. Well, someone, NTK, has to actually work for a living. I mean, somebody has to pay the bills around here. So we needed to fly in close to the race. So we flew Wednesday afternoon, flying overnight, getting in Thursday morning for the Sunday race. Basically, just enough time to build the bike, to get in a little bit of a workout, to shower and knock off all of the travel, and then to rest up. Basically, the minimum amount of time that you could fly into a race and be appropriately prepared for. Did it go well? Yeah, not bad. Couple of things that all of you should know is if you are thinking about doing this, number one, try it ahead of time. I tried this going down to Puerto Rico earlier in the year in March, and it went well. And number two, you might feel a little bit salty the morning of the race because, especially if you're flying east, I started the race at when my body clock felt like it was about midnight. So use the swim just to kind of liven yourself up. It's my bag of nutrition. Let's talk about nutrition because a lot of people have been asking what I did for nutrition for the race, considering that I have been doing this low carb thing. Like, did I have exogenous ketones or did I actually have sugar? Well, spoiler alert, I had a lot of sugar. In the 2 days prior to the race, I increased my carbohydrate intake from an average of 130 grams of carbs a day, which is what I was doing during the training, to 200 grams a day, Friday and Saturday. And this was from good carbohydrate sources. Actually, it was from pizza, but don't tell Dan Plews. So just a slight increase in carbohydrates, and that is more than enough to top up your glycogen stores. The morning of the race, I ended up having about a half a cup of oatmeal, and I mixed that with UCAN super starch. Now that 1-2 combo gets me a lot of carbohydrates, but they're very, very complex carbs, so it gives me a really slow burn, like tens of hours of energy throughout the course of the entire day. Then my race nutrition is basically the exact same race nutrition that I've used for every single other race. Now you can go and actually download your own nutrition calculator at triathlontaren.com/triathlon nutrition guide. And this gets got me, your customized, like the exact amount of calories that you need to take during the race. In my case, I was shooting for 20 grams of carbs every 20 minutes. I started off the plan with 20 minutes before the race, taking a really small little bar that had a bunch of caffeine in it. In transition 1, I had a little mini can of Coke so that basically I topped myself right up to essentially 0 before the bike even started. Then on the bike, I had that 20 grams of carbs every 20 minutes coming from a mixture of Cliff Blocks and Picky bars, but I used the Picky bars with caffeine. At 10K from the end of the bike, 14K into the run and 28K into the run, I took Cramp Fix just to like really liven myself back up, waken all of my muscles up and avoid cramps. And then on the run, I took at every single aid station as much Coke as I could handle. Throughout the bike and the run, the secret sauce that I used was water, just plain old water. Even though I had electrolyte in my bottle on the bike, I had another bottle in behind me of just plain water. And whether I was on the bike or the run, if I started feeling any sort of stomach discomfort whatsoever, I would switch from electrolytes or Coke to just straight water. And instantly, within about 10 minutes of taking that water, my stomach would settle down. So it was as much calories, as much electrolytes as I could take in. As soon as my stomach started feeling a little bit iffy, start taking water while staying on that 20 grams of carbs per 20 minutes. Lots of carbs. You train with low carbs, you race with high carbs, you perform well. Now let's talk about the swim. It was a wetsuit swim for us age groupers, while it was just barely too warm for all the pros to have to swim in swim skins. And I took the swim easy, like really, really easy. Swimming at about 70 to 75% effort. This is just beyond a warm-up. And why I did this is because I am like most amateur swimmers. I mean, I'm not a phenomenal swimmer, because when I end up really pushing the swim pace, it's not like I get that much faster. So I swam at that easy effort, finishing in about 64 minutes. And if I had really pushed a ton faster, I maybe would have finished in about 59, 60 minutes, but I would have been gassed for the rest of the day. So as Coach Dan Plews describes it, the swim in an Ironman is compulsory transportation to the actual start of the race. So save as much energy as possible, which I did. I'm happy I did. It was smooth. I got out of the water. I'm like, all right, I'm awake. I'm good. Let's get onto the bike. So how I approached the bike was similar to the swim. I wanted to conserve energy at the start because it's a really, really long day. So the first 20 kilometers, essentially, all I did was just ride only as hard as I could while still feeling in control, just allowing my heart rate to settle way, way down into the low 130s. Because it's such a long day, you don't want to toast yourself before the race really even starts at 7-8 hours in. So for the first 20 kilometers, I averaged only about 100 and I think it was 75 watts, about 30 watts under my target of 200 to 205. And then what I did at 20 kilometers was I just started gradually building my pace up to a normalized power of 204 watts, which is what I held for the rest of the entire ride. My normalized power ended up being 204 on the nose with an average speed of, I think it would be like 35.1 kilometers because I biked 506. This bike is intended to be really easy, really quite easy. Now, to give you some context, why it felt so easy, I credit to two things. Number one, the low carb approach. The idea with the low carb approach is that you give your body fat, you train your body to use fat so that you don't run out of fuel. When you run out of fuel, that's where you start feeling sore muscles because your body is using all the carbs that you're taking in. Your body is using all the muscle glycogen that was stored up in your muscles from the carb load, but you don't have anything else to use as fuel, so your body starts using muscle and breaks down muscle as energy, and that's where you start getting really sore muscles towards the end of a ride. It also is the reason that you start fading towards the end of the ride, which I didn't do. Second thing that I credit it to is that all of the intervals that we did, any, say, 2 4-minute hard interval was 300 watts or higher. Any 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute, or even 2.5 hour long interval we did on the bike was over race pace, over that 204 watts. We were doing intervals of 260 watts, 280 watts, 240 watts regularly, time after time after time, so that by the time I got to the race, that 204 felt really easy. And what I made sure to do throughout is that anytime I started feeling like a little bit of work was coming in and I was just starting to work a little bit hard, heart rate was climbing a little bit, I would just calm myself down, breathe from my lower belly, and bring my heart rate down so that I got off the bike fresh for the run. And it worked. Now, as far as the run goes, this is the first race of any race I have ever done in my life where the run was the fastest relative to the field of any of the disciplines. I'm pumped. I figured out how to run. 10 years into doing triathlon, I can run now. I ran kind of fast. Now I credit this run performance to a few different things. Number one, the low carb. Because my muscles were still fresh from the bike, I was able to get out onto the run basically like I had just warmed up. Second thing is increased low intensity run volume. I was running 5 or 6 times a week, and let's face it, the run is basically where the race ends up starting. So running and running and running some more ended up helping. And then the third thing is the race plan. The race plan was for me to go out and run 5-minute kilometers. Now for somebody that has ran a 1:28 half, a 19-minute 5K, I was like, 5-minute kilometers, that's so slow. But Reese Barkley said this, Dan Plews said this, basically said that if I can continue running throughout the entire duration of the race, I'm gonna have a pretty damn good marathon. And I did. We went out at 5-minute kilometers for the first 10K and then tried to hold that for the remainder of the race. And I remember thinking at about 20K that Ironman is easy. I was like, this is not too bad at all. 25K started to tickle a little bit, and 28K, that's where shit got real. So it was like 208K of warming up and then actually a 15K race. That end of the race is where I made up huge amounts of time. There weren't that many people that weren't shuffling, that weren't walking, that weren't stopping to throw up, that weren't stopping to adjust for cramps. I ran 42.2 kilometers nonstop with no fade. Besides one little area that had a couple of hills where my kilometer splits went to, I think, 5:20, 5:23, and 5:24, I split 5-minute kilometers almost perfectly on the nose right up until the end. When I was coming back down those hills that my times were a little bit slower, I was still doing a 4:43 kilometer. So right up until the end, I was averaging a 4:58 per kilometer. Boom, boom, boom. And that is what all of this low carb training was for. It was so that I could go smooth right from start to finish, because Ironman isn't about who goes the fastest, it's about who slows down the least. I didn't slow down at all. Well, could have gone a lot faster though, because I make this sound like I'm a total hero, but still an hour and 42 minutes slower than the pros. Still a hero in my own mind. Now, leading up to this race, I didn't know if I enjoyed this whole process, because it's a ton of training, and I didn't know if all of that training was going to result in a good race. And I thought, if I am not really enjoying the huge amounts of training and it's taking away from life, and I need even more training to perform really well, do I enjoy Ironman? Well, what I've found is that combining really smart training with really good nutrition and 17 hours of honest work a week, I think it was an average of about a 13-hour 45 training week, you can perform really well if it's done well. And what I loved about Ironman is that last 15K that was really, really hard, that's where you find yourself, because it's 15K. It's like an hour and 15 minutes of digging deep. Whereas shorter distance races, it's about staying really up high, close to your threshold. And then if you give in, that time of deciding whether or not you can hold the threshold or give in is a few minutes. So you're not really faced with yourself for 75 minutes, 2 hours on end, and seeing if you've got the stuff to dig deep and push through that pain like you do in Ironman. And it's also very different where in Ironman, if you dig deep and you push through that pain, you can hold your pace. Whereas coming off of that threshold, it's a massive drop. It's really hard to do that once you give in. So I liked it. I found myself, and it was dark in there. So am I happy? Yes, absolutely. Let's draw this out a little bit more and do some math. But how do I know this was a good race performance? Well, take my last half Ironman personal best of a 4:35, multiply that by 2 and add an hour. That's usually what you can do for an Ironman based off of your half Ironman time. So that puts me at 10 hours, 10 minutes. I outperformed that by almost a half an hour. But let's say that maybe the Puerto Rico run is quite a slow run. Maybe let's say I'm a fair bit more fit than Puerto Rico. So let's even take a 4:25 half Ironman, multiply that by 2, add an hour, then I'm at 9:50. I outperformed that by 9 minutes. But then you might be saying, well, Taren, Roth is where all of the iron distance world records are set. It's a fast course. Well, yeah, okay, then I can look at how my percentage difference is from the pros, because pros, whether they are Jan Frodeno or whether they are Andy Dreitz, tend to be fairly consistent. So what I mean by that is I was 27% slower than Jan Frodeno in South Africa. This past weekend in Roth, I was only 21% slower than Andy Dreitz. And if you look at all of the pro times, they weren't putting out massively fast times. Lucy Charles was 13 minutes off the world record. Andy Dreitz was 24 minutes off the world record. Because of that swirling wind on the course, it wasn't a super fast day. So just to say, hey, Taren, your 9:41 isn't legit because it's on a fast course, well, why did Andy Dreitz not go super fast? Why did Lucy Charles set a PB but not go super, super, super fast? It's because it was a bit of a slow day. So like any way you look at it, I'm thrilled. I'm happy. Everything worked and I'm pumped. We have a lot of good lessons that we can talk about, Trainiacs. So in all cases, I beat expectations. I am thrilled. I am very thankful. I've been saying all week on Instagram, go follow me on Instagram, by the way, it's gold, that all of the messages that you send me, all of the shout outs on the course, all of the emails that we get, even just knowing that you all are watching motivates me a lot. So thank you so very much. I couldn't have done the training if I didn't know that all of you were out there cheering me on, setting expectations that were high that I needed to try to live up to for myself and for all of you. And hearing like everyone out there in my head while it was on the course and going through that hard 15K, it helped a lot. Now, what we are going to do here, if you've made it this far into the video, which feels like it's been fairly long, we are going to release with Dan Plews, the coach, the PhD, the Kona winner that has helped me through the build of this, who specializes in low-carb triathlon training. We are going to release a limited number of spots for a low-carb triathlon training course that he's produced over at his website, EndureIQ. Now, this is totally limited. This is only going to be open for Trainiacs. This is only going to be available if you are subscribed to triathlontaren.com/theplews. And it's just going to be a very limited amount of spots. If you look at EndureIQ.com, you'll see that all of the courses are sold out. He only opens up the course for specific situations like this one. So go check it out, triathlontaren.com/theplews. Thank you, Trainiacs. Feels good to be home. What's next? I don't know. I don't actually know.